All right, Second Chronicles, the 14th chapter. Let's call this week's set of lessons incomplete, and subtitle this one, Asa worked, because the whole concept of incomplete, even though it's stated in the pejorative, is going to help us understand the next two kings who were for the most part complete. But by the end of each of their reigns, the story is going to tell us some things that kept them from reaching their full potential because they were actually incomplete in some very small ways. But for the most part, they did really well. And so Asa is the king we're going to look at over the next two chapters, steadily grow into a point where God is going to have him prepare Judah to be effectively handed off to his son Jehoshaphat in a great condition. But before that, in this chapter, we are going to see him work during 10 years of rest that God is going to spot him at the beginning of his administration or his reign. And he is going to be wise in his use of those 10 years because he is not just going to work haphazardly. He is going to focus on getting rid of some of the distractions that are going on in Judah so that he can focus the nation on building. So similar to the way that we have seen previous kings of Judah build up their cities and fortify them against potential invasion, Asa is going to continue to fortify the cities of Judah, and that is going to prove to be wise because before we get to the end of the chapter, he is going to see an invasion from Ethiopia and an army of 1,000,000 men and roughly 300 chariots, which is going to overmatch Judah because no matter how much he is prepared, that's an army that's too much for him to basically face on his own. So he is going to choose to do the wise thing, just as he has consulted God or had Judah build in the direction that God would have them go. He is now going to consult God to help them overcome the deficit between what they have built and the challenge that they are facing. And so God is going to turn this into another situation where an invading army seeking to plunder Judah is in fact going to be plundered themselves. And in telling that story, this chapter helped remind me of a few things. First and foremost, the way that Asa used his first 10 years, not to simply enjoy the rest, but to prepare for days when the rest might not be there. He was going to focus them on moving beyond the days when they were simply dismissive of the ways in which God could possibly help them build more effectively to considering the ways that God could help issues both large and small as they sought to move forward as a nation now of only 2 of the original 12 tribes that they started out with. And that is going to prove to be a wise move because as God sees Judah building in a productive direction, even though a much larger army comes knocking at their door, it is going to become apparent, or at least it's going to seem to be apparent, that as Asa appeals to God for help, that God sees something in what Judah has built that's worth helping, which prompted me to consider some questions that I think still matter for us today, meaning much like Asa, are we using our times of peace to prepare for days of adversity, understanding we can never be sure when circumstances might change? Likewise, are we mentally prepared for circumstances to turn against us, or are we clinging to days of peace, understanding that Asa was not simply building up the physical structures of Judah to withstand an attack. He was mentally ready when it happened so that he could realize, oh, wait a minute, as much as we built up, we're still not ready. So that Asa could go to God and ask him to help overcome the deficit between the work that they had done and the challenge that was ahead of them, and have God look on the work that they had done and consider it something that was worth helping. And one of the things that remains true today is that no matter how much we prepare, life inevitably can bring us into circumstances that are larger than even the best preparation. So likewise with us, this story caused me to pause and reflect and consider whether or not the things we're doing, and maybe just as importantly, the way we're going about doing them, whether they're the kinds of things that God considers to be worth helping.